All done. Are you still, can you still share? Try share.
Or I
Okay.
still see that I'm sharing.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. Do you want me to start again or just keep going?
Can you start again, please? Sorry.
Yeah, okay. Aloha mai kākou o Ashley kana liʻihokulani Helenihi koʻui noa. Iwa ka lua o makahiki. Hele au I ke kulanui o Kaleponi Hema, ai ole o USC. No Vancouver, Washington mai au. Yep, I'm Ashley Helenihi. I'm a rising senior at USC in Los Angeles. I am 20 years old. I live in Vancouver, Washington, and I'm the president of the Pacific Islander Student Association, aka PISA, at USC, which is about to go into its 4th year as a club. But yeah, I'm Native Hawaiian and Japanese. So this is a presentation that I gave as a workshop for our first annual conference that we held in February. We had a day for high school students, and then we had a day for community college students. And so I recognize that it's a privilege that I have to be able to use certain language and kind of, or sometimes like use bigger words, but if you guys ever hear something that I say or don't quite understand what I'm talking about, or like, hey, can you clear that up? Just, I think you can just drop it in the chat, or just let me know, unmute your mic if it's really like, I really won't understand what you're saying if I don't know this word right now. But yeah, just let me know. So we're gonna talk about the Pacifica timeline. So Pacifica is kind of the more reclaimed word from the Pacific Islands to talk about the Pacific Islands, to hold the South Pacific and the Pacific Ocean as one entity rather than splitting it up by regions. So we're going to talk about the past, the present, and the future. Yeah, I'm going to go through the past kind of long. So yeah, just try to stay with me. So this is, oh, I don't like how it's not blocking the thing. Anyway, this is a map of the South Pacific and kind of to show the migration pattern. And so it was believed that Guam was first discovered by seafaring people who migrated around 2000 BC, and then over a span of 3,200 years, they expanded south and east throughout Oceania to what we know as Melanesia and Polynesia. And then this is just a gift from Lilo and Stitch, if you guys recognize it. And then this is kind of hopefully engaging. Have you heard the word colonization before? Do you have a working idea of what that means? Anything? Can you guys see?
Kina says nope.
Kina says no. Okay. I saw that there is a thing in the chat, but apparently I can't really open it. Okay. So this is the official definition. It's a noun that means the action or process of settling among and establishing control over the indigenous people of an area. So what does all that mean? It means, you know, foreign people coming in to a land that's already been established by the people there, but kind of taking control over that land, which we've seen in this instance in history. In 1492, we learned about Christopher Columbus a lot, but he is one of the OG colonizers because he discovered America. But truly, one, he arrived at the wrong place thinking that it was India, but he actually arrived in North America, which is why they call Native Americans Indians a lot, even though we're not near India. And so this is just a moment in history to kind of like frame the timeline and just kind of for like context. But yeah, so Columbus is one of the OG colonizers, but we don't recognize him anymore. On Columbus Day, especially in LA, it's Indigenous Peoples Day. And you know, hopefully that's preferred to celebrate that instead of this freaking guy. Okay. 1521, there was the first known contact between Guam and Western Europe by the Portuguese discoverer Ferdinand Magellan. He also really colonized the Philippines, and so people, if you know your Filipino history, he's a prevalent name. But yeah, so this is one of the first moments of contact between a European explorer and the South Pacific. Another instance in history was a Dutch explorer he's noted as the first explorer to sight the Samoan Islands in 1722. And that's already, so the last one was in the early 1500s, right? Like 1520, and then this one is already 200 years later. And then I also wanted to include this, February 14, 1779. So the conference that we had was in February, which this date was more recent. But this is also a good moment to include because Captain Cook was killed in Kealakekua, Hawaii. He first arrived to the Hawaiian Islands. He first arrived to Kauai and then kind of made his way around. He had already been to Tahiti and New Zealand, or Aotearoa, before that, and noticed like similarities in the language. But this is actually like a fun story to kind of look up, is his experience in Kealakekua, especially with Kalaniʻopuʻu. But yeah, so if you never like celebrate Valentine's Day, you can always celebrate this guy making his way out. And then in the 1790s, Christian missionaries started to arrive in the Pacific, where they implemented the Christian religion, Western literacy, which is reading and writing, and culture, without a lot of regard for Pacific cultures. So just kind of like, or a lot of the story usually goes like, oh, these people are uncivilized because they don't wear as many clothes, or they don't, they can't read or write. They only tell their story by, you know, actually telling it and through dance and all this stuff. So we need to civilize them. And that effect lives on to today. In 1810, Kamehameha Nui united the Hawaiian Islands into one kingdom, which was actually prophesied, which is also another fun story to look into. But basically, you know, before he was even born, it was prophesied that there would be the greatest chief of all chiefs born on the night of a bright white light in the sky, which today we know is Halley's Comet. And then so the fact that he lived such a great life, born as Paea, grew into Kamehameha, and this great name as we know it today, is really awesome. And so he won battles with the help of Western weapons during a time of conflict in the islands that would have split the islands apart with Western interests. And so through his actions, he was able to unite all the islands into one kingdom, which is how we know it today as Hawaii, yeah? For some people, when I talk about Kamehameha, especially when I was in high school and stuff, they would think I would be talking about this Kamehameha, but that is not the case. We're talking about this guy, yeah. So King Kamehameha united the islands in 1810 and passed away in 1819. And then in the 1820s, King Liholiho Kamehameha II, oh, maybe you can see this. Okay. He really emphasized literacy or palapala in the Hawaiian kingdom because he already had experience with reading and writing, and he recognized how important it was, especially if Hawaiians wanted to kind of be part of the worldly conversation. And so after the arrival of Western missionaries to Kailua, Hawaii in 1820, King Liholiho led the rise in literacy among the Hawaiian people, from going from almost 0%, you know, where nobody could read and write, to around 95% in 1834, which was only 12 years after the first book was printed in Hawaii, which was in 1822. And I think this is an excellent point to include because there's a misconception that the missionaries like came to Hawaii and were able to develop the Pōʻalua, or like the Hawaiian alphabet, and then be able to teach it to the Hawaiian people, when it's more likely that, or like the Hawaiians were learning English so quickly while the missionaries couldn't learn Hawaiian as quickly. And so the Hawaiians that were able to learn English, they were asked after only a year of learning English to turn around and teach their fellow Hawaiians English. And so it's likely that Hawaiian scholars were the ones to actually develop the Pōʻalua and help out the missionaries, because otherwise it would have taken way longer, because, you know, they just couldn't get a grasp of Hawaiian. But yeah. Shortly after, or later in the century, in 1879 through 1916, in Fiji, more than 60,000 indentured laborers or slaves were brought in from India by Britain to work on sugar plantations. So even though we're kind of focusing on Hawaii in this camp, I also wanted to include moments from other regions of the South Pacific so we can kind of like expand our minds. And so this is important because in the US, the Civil War was already over by 1879. I want to say it was 1861 to 1865, yeah, which was supposed to quote unquote abolish slavery, but hopefully if you've been paying attention kind of to the time that we're in, it wasn't fully abolished. But anyway, meanwhile in Fiji, where it's considered part of Melanesia, which is the darker skinned islands, is like the name that a European gave us. They were still being held in slavery and then bringing in people from India to here. And that legacy lives on to today because I don't know if any of you know a lot of people from Fiji, but a majority of the people there now are Indian or have Indian heritage, while the people who identify as Fijian were kind of pushed out to the outer islands of Fiji. Yeah. Okay. Another moment from a different culture. So in 1889, a German naval force invaded a village on Samoa, and by doing so, destroyed some American property. 3 American warships then entered the Apia Harbor and prepared to engage 3 German warships found there. And so when you look at this, you notice the names like Germany, Samoa, America, and I thought this was interesting to include because it's 2 names, you know, Germany and America, that are not from the South Pacific, and yet they had claim over lands in the South Pacific, and you know, kind of like played around in amongst the Pacific Islands, even though they didn't have claim over these lands. And like, you can write down stuff that you find interesting. You don't have to write down point by point, or just, yeah, just so you don't feel pressured that I'm moving so fast. And if you do, let me know, because I can also just give you some time. In 1896, education through the Hawaiian language in both public and private schools is outlawed on the model of US policy towards the use of American Indian languages in education. Teachers are told use of Hawaiian with children will result in termination of employment. Children are harshly punished for speaking Hawaiian in school. So all of this to say, 1896, when US businessmen, you know, illegally took over the kingdom, they outlawed Hawaiian language in school and in government. And so we kind of talked about this yesterday, yeah, where the Hawaiian language was attacked, and, you know, we still kind of see that effect to today. But, you know, one of the ways that you want to kill a culture is to kill the language. And of course, people are going to use language in schools and government. And so the way you know, stop that is by attacking these places directly. And then some of us, you know, we may know family members who have experienced this, like, because my great-grandmother, she was full Native Hawaiian, but then she was told she could not speak Hawaiian to her children. And so my grandmother grew up in that generation that was pro-Western culture as opposed to, you know, Hawaiian culture. So yeah. But yeah, in 1899, Spain ceded its claim to the islands that now comprise the Federated States of Micronesia to Germany following the Spanish-American War. Another instance of Spain and Germany and America all having a history in where we know as Micronesia, which for folks who don't know where that is, it's really close to Asia. Um, it's another instance of, you know, like countries that aren't from the South Pacific still having claim over lands that aren't theirs, which is, you know, part of the process of colonization, yeah. And June 13th in 1900, Hawaii became an official territory of the United States. This is an old picture to kind of represent that. Yeah, and this is how I feel about it, but you know, yeah. 1914, New Zealand, aka Aotearoa, seized Western Samoa, aka German Samoa, from the Germans on behalf of King George V of England. In 1918, up to a third, or 33%, of the Samoan population were wiped out by the flu, which was made worse by the ill-equipped New Zealand force who were put in charge. And so once again, Germany, you know, had a lot of history, especially with Samoa, to the point that Western Samoa, or what we know today as just, you know, Samoa, was called German Samoa. And there's a lot of Samoan people to today who have German last names, even though they might be, you know, basically like full Samoan, but their last name is like Schmidt or, you know, something like that. And I also thought this was relevant because down in Los Angeles, like the kind of audience I was presenting to, it's a lot of Samoan youth who grow up in SoCal. And recently, in late 2019, there was another epidemic that kind of swept through Samoa, especially with the measles epidemic that they had. And so it was kind of like history repeating itself over about 100 years later, because they didn't have the preparation and they kind of didn't believe in like the vaccine at the time, because I think they had like a story that kind of scared everybody related to vaccines. But a lot of their children were wiped out by measles, which is a disease that we consider today as something that shouldn't really affect us because we have a vaccine for it, you know. And now that we're in a pandemic, it's just very relevant to know how disease has affected our people specifically, especially currently with Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders being the top population to be affected by COVID-19 right now. In 1920 is the first instance that we know of when Samoans began to arrive on the continental United States. And just to give like a little bit of theory about immigration, people tend to immigrate to places that they're familiar with. Yeah, you would rather go somewhere that you know a little bit about rather than to a completely foreign place. And so America had already made itself known in Samoa. And so it was kind of an easy transition for Samoans to then go, okay, I want to move somewhere, I want to immigrate somewhere. Let's go to the United States because we're familiar with it, yeah. 1944, this is around the time, or this is the Second World War. The Battle of Guam resulted in the surrender of Guam by Japanese troops to American naval forces. US also captured control of the federated state of Micronesia from the Japanese. So Micronesia is close to Japan, so it's kind of natural that Japan, when they started extending their reach into the South Pacific, they would kind of start with Micronesian islands, and this is just another instance of countries that aren't Pacifica, you know, having claim over lands that aren't theirs. We're seeing this theme come up over and over with different names: Germany, Spain, Japan, America, all these places that, you know, came to us, and then they're destroying the lands that we live upon, you know, but they have somewhere to go back to. Meanwhile, if this is our homeland, where do we go? On August 21st in 1959, Hawaii became the 50th state through an illegal process, but yeah, that's the day of statehood. And also, you guys can unmute your mics, you can put it in the chat and then somebody read it to me, whatever. What do you guys notice about this picture that I included? Any thoughts? No?
You can raise your hand too. I'm looking.
Almema said the men look happy. Kina said a lot of white guys.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. It's a lot of happy white guys. And then, yeah, majority of this picture is a lot of happy white guys who were able to, get the job done by making Hawaii into a state of America. Great job, Kina. I see your yay. And yeah, I'm not sure if he's Hawaiian or Asian, but yeah, it's majority white people, which is, very, I think it's important to note that, yeah. And then another Pacifica group in the late 1960s was the first large migration of Tongans to the United States, which saw families settling primarily in Hawaii, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. And I don't know if anybody has family, like kind of in California and stuff, but these are really big populations for the Pacific Islander community, especially Tongans and Samoans, Hawaiians. These are places where people tended to settle themselves, especially along the West Coast. And so you might have heard me say the word indigenous, or you might have heard, or, we kind of talked about it yesterday and stuff. Does anybody have a working idea of what indigenous means?
You guys can type it in the chat too. Okay, Kina says native.
Native. Okay, yeah.
Coco said original people. What? Oh, an individual cultural group.
An individual cultural group, native. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Native people to their land. Yes, perfect. Okay, so this is a technical definition. It's an adjective meaning originating or occurring naturally in a particular place, or native. So yeah, we're gonna kind of talk about more like the indigenous processes throughout history. And so we come to, hopefully this box disappears, 1976, the Hokulea completed its first voyage from Hawaii to Tahiti and back, thus sparking a period called the Hawaiian Renaissance. And so this is an important moment in our Hawaiian history, especially with the Hawaiian Renaissance movement, because we almost lost traditional ways of navigating to history, but Captain Nainoa Thompson learned from Captain Mau Piailung, from our brothers and sisters in Micronesia, who was still using these traditional methods of navigation to complete this voyage, and which is awesome. Yeah. And so in 2017 they did another voyage in a bigger way. In 2017 the Hokulea returned to Hawaii after a 3-year voyage around the world using only traditional navigation tools as utilized by our ancestors. And they were going around to talk about sustainability, indigenous methods, and malama honua, yeah, to take care of the earth. And so I thought it was good to include this quote from Captain Nainoa Thompson. He said, "That's why we sail, so our children can grow up and be proud of whom they are. We are healing our souls by reconnecting to our ancestors. As we voyage, we are creating new stories within the tradition of the old stories. We are literally creating a new culture out of the old," which I think is excellent to say, because it talks about how we can use our traditional tools from the past, but we're also creating something as we go, yeah, by reconnecting with our ancestors, by healing through these practices. It's really important to acknowledge our ancestors and take that and move forward into the future, because indigenous people, our cultures, are not something to be left behind, yeah. They're meant to be present and to be taken care of by us, by our future keiki, into the future, so that they can live on, yeah. And so that brings us to the present, where we have this legacy of colonization that lives on to today. I think it's important because, colonization, we kind of think of it as a word of something that happened in the past, yeah. Columbus did that, but it's not happening now. But actually, it's a process we're still living in. Yeah, we're kind of part of it by being on lands that aren't originally ours. Southwest Washington, we're in traditionally Chehalis and Chinook lands and other tribes. Down in Oregon, you guys have your other local tribes. And it's important to acknowledge that we're occupying space and we're part of colonization right now by, being here, by being the United States of America. But for the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community, this legacy of colonization kind of lives in how we're represented in higher education. Higher education is another term for when you go to college and stuff, yeah. And in a 2014 article, it said that only 18% of Pacific Islanders have a bachelor's degree, which I don't know, for some people might sound like a lot, might sound like a little, but in comparison, it's expected that a third or 33% of the country overall should have a bachelor's degree or does have a bachelor's degree, while the Asian community has 2/3 or 66% have a bachelor's degree. And so this brings us to the next point of the API label. You might have heard Asian Pacific Islander used as a term that holds these two groups together. And yet, if you think about the 2/3 of Asians who have a bachelor's degree and the 18% that have a bachelor's degree in the NHPI community, these are totally different amounts, right? And so when you group them together into API, what are you doing for the Pacific Islander community by brushing them under the rug and including them in statistics that might seem like, oh, they're all doing so good, when really we're not, And so we need that kind of separate attention. And so that word can be disaggregate, which is when you separate data, whichever. There's also the legacy of tourism and cultural appropriation. And so what are some ways, you guys can put it in the chat, I can actually see it on my screen, so I'll be able to see it. But what are some ways that PIs are represented, or Pacific Islanders are represented to the public? Or what are some things you've heard about Hawaiians, other Pacifica groups, about hula, stuff like that? Just anything you want to put in.
She's asking you guys. Anybody can say it.
Yeah, you can unmute. I was like, maybe I'll just tell it.
Yeah, no, we can hear you.
Okay. Hard to think while the ice cream truck is on my street. That would make it really hard. Okay, so yeah, just think about these things of how do we see Pacific Islanders represented to the world? They think, everybody's a hula dancer, everybody is exotic and lazy. That's actually a stereotype that comes up a lot. What are some that the students brought up in California? They said, we eat a lot and, we all play sports and all this and stuff, but it's thinking about the tourism industry and cultural appropriation, angry, okay, yeah, and that Pacific Islanders are hot-headed. How are Pacific Islanders?
This also answers the question if people watched the video from last week about Pacific Islander stereotypes. Just saying as a video, guys.
Yeah, what do you want people to know about Pacific Islanders and stuff? But yeah, so there's a lot of cultural appropriation happening in our islands, yeah, where people just kind of, or where Hawaiian is a party theme, cellophane skirts, yes. I've never really seen any other party theme, coconut bras, yes. Or yeah, so that's kind of part of the party themes and stuff where Hawaiian can be a theme, and yet they don't really do that with other cultures, but that's fakely, yes. These are all really good answers, okay. So moving on to climate change, there's also the legacy of colonization and climate change, where we're losing our homelands. And so statistically, or according to data, Pacific Islanders in the South Pacific contribute to climate change the least. And yet, the Pacific Islands are affected first, before anyone else, by climate change, because we're literally in the ocean, yeah? And so when the ocean levels are rising, it can feel like our islands are sinking, which is kind of what the GIF I included is about. And so we're losing our homelands, but it's not really because of our actions, yeah? Like, we're not contributing to it as much, and yet we're the first to feel the experiences, which is unfair, and because of this process of like capitalism, colonization, and all that. The US Census 2020 is really important. I think it's still going on, and it started April 1st. It's a count of the US population that occurs every 10 years. And so you don't have to comment or anything, but just like take a second to think about your life 10 years ago. What were you doing 10 years ago? Some of you weren't even alive 10 years ago, yeah? And you think about that and you go, okay, 10 years ago, that was such a long time. I lived a whole life since then. I lived most of my life. Being born, yeah, exactly. 10 years ago, it's like I was born, okay? And then think about your life in 10 years. So if you're 10 now, you're gonna be my age in 10 years. If you're 15 now, you're gonna be 25. You're gonna be like done with college, probably. That's a long time away. And so with the US Census only coming every 10 years, you have to make your existence right now count. You have to make other people recognize that you exist, your community exists, your people exist. And that's by encouraging your family and your communities to make sure you get counted. So hopefully everybody's families completed their census already. But you know, if you know anybody who's like, what's the census still? You can be like, oh my gosh, like, love yourself enough to be counted by the government so that you can get funding and all that stuff, you know? Love your people enough so that you're recognized in America as long as we live here. And you don't even have to be a technical citizen of America to be counted. They just want to know, like, who's living here, yeah? So it's really important. And then, so kind of moving on, the Mauna Kea movement is also a thing of the present that is kind of combating the legacy of colonization that we live in, yeah? By revitalizing our cultural practices, even when we're up against oppression or up against fight back, you know, by these non-Hawaiian, non-Pacific Islander groups and entities. And so the way that kind of looks like, and so kind of thinking back to like how the hokulea was to revitalize natural practices or indigenous practices, these are also practices on the on Mauna Kea that were being used, where it's like malama aina to take care of the land, but aina can also be, or this is kind of that thing about how people were talking about, it's like kind of it helps to speak the language so that you understand the words better. And even though I'm not fluent in Olelo Hawaii, the way I've gotten to understand the word aina is your land, but it can also be kind of like the resources from the land, your food, your family. And so malama aina is so much bigger than just like, oh, I compost or something, you know. It's like taking care of everyone and this resource, the land, that gives so much to you. They also do cultural protocol 3 times a day. I know some of you folks like know this and help sustain those practices, which is so awesome. And then aloha aina, you know, having love, unconditional love for your land, your people, and all that. And these are very indigenous practices. You don't really see these things in Western culture, in American culture, where everything's about like, oh, you have to work hard, it's about yourself. In indigenous cultures around the world, it's usually a culture of looking out for each other, of I can't grow without my community. In my community, we come up together, yeah? And so focusing on Hawaii, we talked about the Hawaiian Renaissance movement, how that kind of sparked in the late 70s, 80s with Punana Leo, the hokulea, all these reclaiming our practices and our native culture. And then, but in Hawaii specifically too, we also see effects of colonization through disease and health, where if you look traditionally, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders were very healthy, you know, like over 6 foot usually, whatever. But then today we kind of associate it more with like having poor health due to diabetes, asthma, heart disease through the introduction of sugar to our islands, and then just not having adequate care for our people. Yeah. There's also the issue of homelessness in Hawaii. If you've been to Hawaii, there's probably a big chance you've noticed that people are homeless or houseless, because some people have homes, they just might not have a house, where a third of the homeless population or houseless population in Hawaii identifies as Native Hawaiian. So many cars are driving past, so sorry. Identify as Native Hawaiian, and another 27% identify as other Pacific Islander. So a lot of our own people are houseless in our own islands, yeah. There's also the big migration movement from Hawaii to the continental US. Some people call it the mainland, but I think it's good to kind of reframe how we think about this land. It doesn't have to be the main one, where a lot of Hawaiians are moving to the US. You know, the fact that we're all here, if you identify as Native Hawaiian, is, you know, part of that process. And it's not really like our fault. Sometimes it's just, it's so expensive to live there. Sometimes you need resources that might not be available at home. You know, it's just noticing that this is a thing that happens. As we discussed, the issue of climate change in Hawaii, changing lands and coral reefs and stuff in Hawaii, and then stereotypes and oppression, as we discussed kind of in the last slide, yeah. And so now that we've kind of talked about the present, it's kind of wishy-washy, where it's like, we have all these effects of colonization, we're still living in it, but then we also are reclaiming our practices and kind of like making a comeback, you know? Now that we've talked about that, how do we think about the future? And so as Keiki, you guys are part of the future, but then also you should think of yourselves as future ancestors. There will be a time where people will look to you as their ancestor. And so when you think about, what do you think the future of Pacific Islanders should look like, or what do you hope that it will be? You can take a moment to write that down, or you can share it in the chat. Like, what do you hope the future of Pacific Islanders looks like, and how do we achieve that dream? You know, how do we get there? Actually, yeah, you can just write it down. You don't have to put it in the chat. But yeah, so these quotes: the best way to predict the future is to create it. The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. It's having the audacity to hope for a better future for our people, and then be able to take the steps to work towards that, yeah? So just take a moment to think about like what you want your future to be like. It doesn't have to just be Pacific Islanders. You can talk about your own community if you don't identify as a PI, to be like, what do I want the future of my people to be? Because wow, I really identified with the things Ashley talked about. So how do we do better? Yeah. Yeah, we'll take another like 10 seconds. I'm gonna watch this Moana GIF a little longer. Okay. And then, so yeah, it's okay if you didn't finish writing anything, because just to do a quick timeline activity, we're gonna answer the question, as future ancestors, what do you want your legacy to be? And so I heard this in a conference a couple years ago, where the way we move into the future sometimes is by walking backwards, and so that we can make that progress, but we're looking backwards so that we can see the work that our ancestors did, you know, constantly referring to our past while also making forward progress. And so as future ancestors, what do you want to be remembered by? Legacy is like how you live on, basically. And so if you just draw a line on your paper, I would like you guys to mark 3 important moments that have happened in your life so far, anywhere from birth to today. And then, so 3 of those moments, and then 2 goals you have for the future. So 2 goals for yourself, whether it's further down the line, it could be for tomorrow, just 2 goals that you have for the future. and then one moment from the past before you were even born that happened, but and was able to shape your life. If you have any questions, you can let me know. It's all on the same line, kind of like how a timeline goes. But yeah, so one chunk could be your life, and then you can have a chunk for the future and a chunk for the past. And then just write, like, you know, in 2005, some of you guys weren't. I don't know if you were around in 2005. So it'll be like, in 2018, I was on honor roll. Or for me, like 2017, I graduated from high school. That was a big deal for me. Stuff like that. You're two. I can see some folks are still writing, but if you're Paul writing, does anybody want to share? You don't have to share your whole timeline. You can just share something. Oh, yes, Nicholas, you have a question?
So for the 2 goals you have for your future, do you put it on the timeline or that timeline?
Yeah, you can put it on your timeline, and so like separate it into the past, present, future, kind of like how we talked today. And so put it like, or whatever your graduating class is, you can say like, in 20 something something, I'll graduate from high school, or I'll go to college, or maybe.
Hopefully if there is. Hopefully if there is. If we can
Yeah, but we'll be optimistic, because
yeah.
hopefully we all move into the future.
Yeah. Thank you.
But yeah, so if you're done and want to share, you can share 1 or 2 moments that you put down on your timeline if you want. Keizo, are you done? No? I was gonna ask you to share because I can see your camera. Yeah, if anybody wants to.
Mayma, don't be side asking me. You make me old. Cause I don't know. I have to think. What year did I start dancing hula? 1986.
Okay. Oh wait, I saw Nicholas's chat, and then Mayma, you can go after. So Nicholas, go ahead.
You want me to show my camera or like just save it? Like.
Whichever.
Okay, so I guess like for 2006 was pretty important because I was born, and then
Okay.
and then 2018 was pretty important for me because like it was a transition from elementary school to middle school, which was a big transition, and that's kind of really what I had in mind for now.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
2020 was kind of like an awful year, but kind of important about like the pandemic and like for present, and then 2025 is when I graduate from high school, and then 2029 is when I graduate college.
Oh man. Okay, yeah, that's awesome. I'm like, that's the future for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, 2020 is a big year. We're all living in a moment in history, down the line.
Yeah.
This year will be in history books for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Mayma, did you want to share?
Thank you.
I'll just share like the one moment from like the past. So one was like, I secretly asked Kamalani Koku this, but in 2003, the Dutros moved to Oregon, and if they haven't moved here, I would have never, found my love for hula or met them and had the opportunities I have now. And like another like small moment is 1986 when Intile found her love for hula, because if she never did, then she would have not had her passion to teaching others. So
Oh my god, this is the best. Keep going, Mima.
Mima,
Years you got in there.
Mima, Mima. Mima, you can get it, Mima. Don't
Way to
forget.
rope in other
Don't forget.
people.
Don't forget, you guys did basics today, yeah, Mima.
Mima.
Basics today, Mima. And
just erase what I said.
guess who's the whole pod today? Ooh, Auntie Steffi, aren't you in that class too? Rough.
But yeah, that is a big moment from the past that shaped your life today. I'm also grateful for when I started dancing hula and for when my kumu started dancing hula, because, you know, I've had a lot of opportunities from that. And it even, you know, affected my knowledge to today. Like, I wouldn't be the way that I am if it wasn't through hula and the programs that we had, yeah. Any other peepo? Kina, I feel like you have really good stuff to share. No? Okay.
She always.
Cordelia, you have your hand up.
Oh.
Well, I was born in 2010, which was one of probably the most important, because if I wasn't born, then I couldn't have any goals or anything. And then I went to school, like my first day of school was in 2014 when I went to preschool. And then I kept going to school and stuff. And now I'm going to go into 4th grade. And in 2018, we got Ipo, our dog. So those were like, getting Ipo was really important too, because it taught us more responsibility and stuff. And kind of like the important things.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm noticing that a lot of good moments from our life are when we were born, you know, which is huge. And then if you ever want to revisit this activity, maybe when you go to high school, or if you're already in high school, maybe when you go to college, you reflect on an activity like this and then be like, wow, I've had bigger moments too, you know, and, you know, make moments that you're noting in your head. Yeah. Let me see what's after this slide. I think it's just oh yeah, so that's the end of my presentation. I can stop sharing my screen and then we can share more about the activities and stuff, but or the activity that we just did. But yeah, thank you guys for being a good audience and watching. It's kind of different when it's virtual, but yeah, thank you.
Good presentation.
Oh, thank you.
My client, Mahalo, Ashley. So I think we're continuing to share our timeline, right, Ashley?
Yeah. Now that it's more in gallery view, I can like see everybody. But yeah, so if anybody else wants to share, or if you don't really want to talk, I guess you can just put it in the chat. But we've seen each other for almost a week and a half now, so.
I mean, and if you guys have been to Hāloa with Auntie Steffi and I, you know that we're gonna ask you all to share. So, these are like participation. Okay, who's next? Besides telling people about Auntie Lay's age. Keizo, are you running? Keizo, are you starting to share? Where's Keizo?
Yeah, Keizo is sharing over chat.
Over chat, okay. All right, we'll do. Keizo, you can keep typing. I think, Sophia, you raised your hand. So you can share.
Oh, okay. So a big part that kind of impacted my life before I was born is like 2006, kind of 2007, when my parents moved to Chucker Road, which is like not really close to here anymore, but it kind of impacted my life, and I was gonna go to school for like a big chunk of my life. And then 2014, when I started dancing hula 6 years ago. 2018, when I purchased my guinea pig, he had a lot of impact on my life because now I have more responsibility and he just brightens up my day. 2019, when me and my class, like Neima and Chloe and all of them, we went on a huaka'i, like a really cool educational journey to the Hawaiian Islands, and we just learned so much. And then in my future, in 2026, I want to graduate high school. And then somewhere in the 2030s, I hope to become a teacher and educate children.
That's so awesome.
Good job.
Yeah, very good.
That changed, Sophia, over like the course of the year, from lawyer to teacher. Good job.
Why not both? No, just kidding.
I was just about to say that. Actually, I was like, I mean, why not both?
You gonna be both?
Sophia will make a great teacher.
We can be teachers together.
You both want to be teachers? That's awesome.
Yeah, I do.
I'm also seeing in the chat, Kina wrote being born. Micah said I was a baby. That's hopefully relatable for us all.
From when you asked what was happening 10 years ago, they typed that.
I thought that was like moments. That's true. 10 years ago, a lot of you folks were babies.
Kina, you ready to share, Kina?
Okay, cool. Go ahead, Kina.
So for my past, I said being born in 2010. In 2011, I moved here. And in 2014, I started hula, which definitely changed a big part of my life. And my present is COVID-19 and turning 10 a few days ago. And my future is I want to graduate college and become an artist, and I don't know what year that is.
Being an artist, that's awesome.
It's so far away, guys. She doesn't know what year it is yet.
And what kind of artist do you want to be, Kina Bailey?
I don't even know.
That I know you know. What kind of artist do you want to be?
Do you want to make something with your hands? Do you want to be a singer? Do you want to... Art can be anything, so.
Do you want to be an actress?
Actress.
I like sketching. I can be a sketcher. If that's a word.
Yeah, you can make it a word. Akim Su House is asking to share. Go ahead.
I already shared my timeline, but my 2 goals are to graduate college, which in a lot of years, because
Wait, it kind of froze for a second. Can you repeat the last part? Oh, it might be a bit delayed.
You guys can type it if you can in the chat. Might be easier. It's coming through a little bit like Dory. Can you go ahead and type it in the chat? Mima, did you raise your hand again, Mima? Oh, okay.
She had to share everybody else's past earlier, and now she could share.
I have to
Perfect.
share my present and future.
Awesome.
So
Go ahead.
present was in 2017 or like 2018 is when I started to really understand and truly have passion for hula, because before, I bet this was like for all hula dancers, they didn't like it at first because like they weren't, used to always constantly going to practices. But once in 2017 and 18, I started to finally have the desire to wanting to go to hula practices and learning. 2019, I was like Sophia, I was able to go on the hula trip, which it changed not only our connection with each other, but with the Hawaiian culture. Also in 2018 was my first competition, because it not only trained myself as a hula dancer physically and mentally, but it shaped me as a person today. And then hopefully in like 2035 or later, I hope to do workshops, around the world to perpetuate the Hawaiian culture, like specific places like Japan or the, the Philippines or anywhere else. And then again, like 2035 or past, I hope to be in the medical fields, because I would like to, be able to take care of my mother as like a caregiver. And yeah.
Holla,
Thank you
Mima.
very much.
It's weird. I think Mima and I will be both teaching workshops in the same places. We might run into each other.
You'll be together
Hi, Haley.
forever.
Yeah, Haley had to go, but she put her chat in the chat. She put her timeline.
2023. I can't believe she's gonna graduate in 2023. Oh my God, Haley. That's crazy. Too long. Too long.
Yeah, I think she left already, but thank you, Haley.
Who's next?
Kahokue Kamalani can go. Because
Okay.
over here fighting and poking the pencil in each other's eye.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
You can go first. I'm still trying to do mine.
Yes, we do hear you guys. So.
So the past would be me being born, I guess. And then moving to Oregon. And then dancing hula and meeting all my hula brothers, sisters, aunties, and uncles. And then the present would be going on the trip with my hula sisters and aunties. And graduating from middle school into high school. And then my future, in 2023, I would like to graduate high school and then go into college. And then also my past would be 2008, 2009, 2011, when my brothers were born. Also a big part. So yeah.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you.
One of my goals for the future would be to get an award for acting, and then another goal would be to actually act in a movie, and one of my important moments in my life would be one baking with my brother. That was a really good moment. Another good moment was my basketball team working together and winning third place in our tournament And then my last good moment would be spending time with my family. And yeah.
Awesome, thank you. If you somehow get an acting award before you act in a movie, I will be your biggest fan.
Girl, he gives himself the awards.
But no, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I'm gonna make Naomi share, so go ahead, Naomi.
Yay.
A big part in my life was.
Oh, well, we're right.
One of you gotta turn off your mic.
Yeah.
And one of you gotta turn off your speaker.
Try now. Can you hear that? Okay. In 2010, I was born, and then 2 years later, in 2012, I broke my arm, and I became the only right-hand person in my family. And then in 2016, I started school for kindergarten, and then for my future, I want to go to USC and study to become a teacher or a lawyer. And then a big moment in my life was when I got my dog, Honey.
Thank you.
Chloe, you ready, Chloe?
It's really loud out here. There's like people doing construction. So I think I'm just gonna put it in the chat.
Oh, we can hear you.
Oh, you can? Okay, I'll do it now then. So I have two from my past. So in 1899, my great-great-grandparents moved to Hawaii. And in the 1950s, my grandparents moved to Los Angeles from Mexico. And then in 2005, I was born. In 2010, I moved to Oregon. In 2012, I started dancing hula. In 2016, my sister and my nieces moved to Oregon. In 2019, we went on our huaka'i. And right now, a big thing is coronavirus, obviously. And when I go to high school, I guess I'll probably want to get a job. And in 2024, I'm graduating high school.
Anybody else? That was really awesome. Thank you, Chloe. 2024.
Micah, are you raising your hand, Micah? Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, so my thing from the past before I was born was when my parents got married. I don't remember when that was. And then the three really important things that happened to me in my life was when I met my dog when I was little, when I was born, and when I went to states, solos, and chess. And then my two goals for the future is getting a dog and being noticed by more people.
Thank you. A front row seat to my parents' wedding. It's funny.
Who else didn't share yet? Angelina, yep.
Angelina, go ahead.
Wait, can I go? Oh, okay. So the three important things or moments in my life. The first one was being born. in 2008, and then in 2012 I was introduced to hula for the first time, and then in 2018 was moving to Oregon. One of the goals that I have for the future is getting a scholarship, and hopefully one of my dream jobs is to be an artist. I think one moment from the past that kind of shaped my life was probably when my mom and dad met, because if they didn't met, they wouldn't have me. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you very much. Awesome. What kind of artist do you want to be, Angelina?
A painter, I think.
Painter. That's awesome. And Liam had to go, so he put his in the chat. One thing from the past was when his parents first started dating, and that was in 1996. Then 3 important things that happened were: 1, when his grandfather passed away in 2013, 2014, when he started learning about his culture, and 2014, when he graduated middle school. Oh, learning about his culture in 2014, he put it twice. Then when he graduated middle school in 2020, then 2 goals he has for the future are to get a degree in something and learn the Hawaiian language. I hope we all get a degree in something. That is my current goal right now. And then, who do we have left? Is
Kaliko.
Hazel, did you share, and Kaliko?
Hazel put hers in the chat earlier.
Oh, she did? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, she wants to be a geologist. Cool. And Kaliko?
Hi. I don't really have anything right now, but I might have something like later. Sorry.
Okay.
Think of it, Kaliko. Why don't you type it in the chat?
Wow.
Yeah, that's probably best.
Okay.
What grade are you going to be in, Kaliko?
9th.
Yeah, sounds about right. Awesome. I think everybody went, right?
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think after he puts his in the chat, I think that was everyone. Unless Auntie Louise, you want to share or anything?
Oh, were we supposed to do ours too? Auntie Steph, you did yours.
I figure. Might as well.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm getting on it right now.
I didn't write down. I can help you.
Alea, I'll make you feel better. I started hula in 1969, so there you go. A lot of you know that along with like Auntie Steffi, I attended the Kamehameha schools, and that was a big turning point in my life, because I went to school Hawaiian kids doing Hawaiian things. Hula was every day. Singing was every day in Hawaiian, and you know, it was a big turning point in my life, and then that turned into college. So of course I'm a lot older. I'm probably I could be your guys' grandma, but that was a big pivotal moment in my life, was graduating from Kamehameha schools. Now a lot of you could be, but wouldn't be, but I had a great experience learning about my culture, and that was a big pivotal point. All of you said that you want to learn about your culture, and it would help you, and I agree with that. So the other part is learning more about my the other indigenous part of me is Native American, and that's that's sort of my kuleana, is to share that with other people too. So hopefully next week that will be what we'll be talking about, is indigenous, Hawaiian indigenous, and Native American indigenism, or whatever. So it's going to be fun to do that next week. I'm looking forward to it. And the other thing is becoming a teacher. Wanted to be a teacher since I was 9, and I was a teacher for 41 years. So you can do it. 41 years. And it was the best time I had in my whole entire life, was meeting with students and having a great time being in the classroom with kids. So that is probably some of the turning points in my life. So thank you. Good to see everybody.
Mahalo, Auntie Louise. Nicholas is asking, what kind of teacher were you?
I was a really good teacher. Nah, anyway, no, I taught kindergarten through 6th grade. And then I worked at the central office in the administrative office, and I worked with Native American families. So my career made a little change, and in teaching, your careers can go in different ways. So I worked with Native American families, and also I was in kindergarten. Love kindergarten and 1st grade. The most fun. We are really fun when we're in kindergarten and 1st grade, but then we got to grow up. So thank you.
Mahalo. Auntie Steffi, do you want to go?
It looks like she's still writing. Okay, so I started dancing hula when I was 4, so that had to have been 1995. So 1995, I started dancing hula. And then I started going to Kamehameha schools at the age of almost 5. So that's the same year, I think, it all started. Let's see, I decided to actively pursue Hawaiian language my freshman year of high school. And that was like right after I had quit hula. I actually quit hula the first time. Went back to hula, quit again when I was a sophomore. Then I became a canoe paddler. So I got in touch with that part of me. Let's see. Oh, there's some piano sprinkled in there too somewhere. Then I went to I went to college. Then I decided that I was going to do the luau, which ironically brought me back to hula. And then what else did I do? Oh, I switched my major when I was a sophomore from, I didn't know what I want to do. Actually, I wanted to be a journalist, then I changed to an engineer. And then when I was a senior in college, I changed my mind again. And I changed my mind from being an engineer to being a teacher, which is where I am now. So then I started teaching, joined the Hula in 2014, I think. Yep, came back to hula and Hawaiian language. Joined Hāloa last year. Now we're back. And here we are today. In the future, I don't know. I don't know what's going to be in the future. It's probably still teaching. Probably have a family. That's probably it for now.
Those are good future goals. You know?
We're all waiting for the baby too.
I'm waiting for my cousin.
I was like, I kept writing stuff and I didn't know what avenue to go to. So past, I would say if we went to the 1930s, I'm gonna talk about my language side. So 1930s would be my grandma. She's the reason why Hawaiian language is important. She's a fluent speaker from the island of Niihau. And then I would say my mom, so 1961, so before me, right? Then my mom was born. And then in the year that I was born was like, you know, a nationally recognized day. The day I was born for my mom. Maybe not to other people, but I tell her that all the time. I think, and then my first hula show was in a certain year, my first hula show in 1987, and then after 1987, I was a part of Kiki Hula. From then to like 92, for a long time. And then in 1991 was when I realized that I had a love for hula and I had a love for Hawaiian language. And it was from that moment on that I committed myself to hula. In 1993 was when our family became a part of the Kaiapuni program when my sister went to Punanaleo, and Hawaiian language was, Auntie Steffi was getting ready for graduate high school already by then. We became a part of the Kaiapuni school program, became a part of that, the revival of Hawaiian language in 1993. And then I went to Navahi in 1995. I was a fluent speaker by the end of 1995. And so, in 1995, I was a fluent Hawaiian language speaker. This is a lot, man. You guys make us think back that whole 1995 I was a fluent language, and in 2001, I became one of the third graduating classes that was completely immersed and taught through Hawaiian language. And our class, all of us actually, because back then they didn't think that none of us could make it to college. All of us were accepted. All 12 of us were accepted to colleges throughout the nation. I chose Washington State University, so I went to WSU. I had hoped to become, I wanted to at the time, after graduation, to become a guidance counselor. I wanted to go back to school to become a guidance counselor, to then go back to Navahi to work at the school. But that changed when I moved here to Oregon. And then in 2008, we opened the Hāloa. And in 2008, we opened the Hāloa. And here I am today teaching. Did I do this right? Am I doing that right? Am I going in the right direction? Yeah.
Yeah, your future though.
Am I what?
Future. What are you gonna do for
the future? Yeah, I think 2008 the Hāloa. In 2012 we got these kids who changed my life, and my future, I think, for me is my future to see and help these kids, my kids, graduate high school and go on to college and pack them up and move them out of my house. Is one future. And then the next one is maybe to continue to watch our Hāloa grow. And because in 1996 I did my first unihi, and then in 1999 I did my second unihi. And I hope that in the near future, I get to then hold an unihi in our Hāloa to then pass on some of the knowledge to the next generation of leaders in hula and Hawaiian culture. That's the future. And maybe go to the Merry Monarch to sit on the cement bench and watch them dance hula. Yeah.
You had them for a minute there. They all were like,
Mima was like, yeah, no, girl. No. I told Mima, we go to Merry Monarch. She bring that college degree, we go to Merry Monarch.
To sit on the side though. To sit on the side.
I never told her we was entering. I just told her we could go Merry Monarch. However she interpret that's on her. I like that, Ashley. I like that assignment. We should add that into Hāloa. I like that. Thinking of
Mahalo, yeah. I think I think it's cool because it kind of makes people think about stuff, and a lot of the students at our conference, they talked a lot about when their parents and stuff immigrated to the continental US and how that was like really formative because, you know, they sacrificed a lot to come to America and things like that. So yeah, no, thank you guys for all participating. Mahalo ko. Yeah, any other thoughts or anything? I'm really glad
I'm also
want to go to college. Huh?
I'm also going to put that Havina into our Hāloa because, you know, something like I never think about it because now I'm older. Because when you're in college, right, that's always the assignment you get, yeah? Or when you're in high school, like, what do you see yourself doing in 10 years? But as you get older, sometimes you forget that you can still ask yourself that question and you can still set goals and all of that. So I'm like, oh, that's such a great Havina for the Hāloa too. Thanks, Ashley.
Oh, mahalo. Thank you.
Yeah. Mahalo nui. Everybody give yeah. Say mahalo, mahalo, Ashley.
Thank you.
Mahalo, Ashley.
Mahalo, Ashley.
Thank you guys.
Oh, we did. Darn it. Awesome. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. So today, so what happened was that Auntie Leigh and I were waiting to post the words of the day until we came to class, but I know that some of you like to do your tasks in the morning, so we switched it. So starting tomorrow, it will start posting by midnight with the actual day's task. So if you did not do your hua'olelos, please make sure that you do that. It looks like most of us did. I saw that some of us were asking how to put the pictures on. I don't quite know how to do that yet, so we're gonna take a look. But just hold on to your pictures, and we'll have you share them on Friday. Okay.
And for tomorrow, if everybody can please try to sign in. I know this is asking us to come a little bit early by 12:45, so that we're ready. We're not waiting for everybody to come in and then starting, so that you folks can have your full time with and Uncle Kalani's presentation and all of that. So if you guys can, and that will be the same for on Thursday. Yeah, because we're very thankful that Ashley's here. She's been a part of it, and she was able to stay a little bit longer, but Uncle Kalani and Auntie Trish may not be able to do that. So if you guys can come a little bit earlier, so that they can start their presentation at 1 o'clock. And Auntie Stephanie and I can go over any details we need to beforehand, if that works for you. Does that work for everybody? Can we all do that? 12:45? Okay, my ka'i, mahalo. All right, did we have anything else, Auntie Steffi?
No, I think that's it for today. I waited to add the stuff. So there are still some questions. Ashley answered most of the questions that are in your exit ticket today in the Google form. There are a couple that we will still continue to go over, so don't sweat it. You can always research on your own, right? Or you can ask each other. A lot of people in this group know a lot of the answers to these questions, so you guys can also work together and comment and check in with each other as well. Okay? It's up there now. Yeah, I didn't want all these people who have been completing it before they come to the meeting to do it. So make sure the exit tickets, try to make sure you guys do that after, okay? The hua'olelos you can do before, but try to do the exit ticket after, because a lot of times it's going to ask you what you learned from the presenter. Okay? Okay? All right, everyone.
Great. My
Have a
ka'i.
good rest of your day.
Ahuiho.
Tina, it's added to the task now. Wherever she went. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Wait, what is?
Did you find it, Kina?
Yeah.